but I think a camera. Actually, we might actually need to bring a microphone. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a flat earther. I recently deconverted from Globism a few months ago, but I wanted to like sort of play devil's advocate for the Globe and see how you'd respond. Is that fine?
Yeah, we should do it in reverse. You should be the flat earther. But no, go ahead.
Yeah, I can defend the flat Earth pretty well. My arguments are I described them earlier, but my arguments are when I look at the ground, I don't see any curvature. Nobody has ever seen curvature. I also argue that I've prayed to God, and I've prayed about this question for months, and He's also told me that the Earth is flat. I believe. And also my argument, I also argue that the moon landing is fake and stuff. Sorry. Can I do anyway? This is getting off track.
What's just a quick question for you? You know what the radius of the globe Earth is?
The equatorial radius or because the radius it's different at different.
Just any of them.
I don't know. I've written it down somewhere. I don't have it off the top.
No, the radius of a sphere or a circle is the same. It's always from the center to any
but it's an oblate. But they want to say it's an oblate spheroid, so the radius is not the same at each. This is like such basic. How do you not know this?
It's negligible.
Just give the generally accepted answer is perfectly fine.
He wrote it. His dog ate it home. His dog ate the.
I don't know it off the top of my head. It's in my head somewhere.
Is he playing? What is he playing? The Glober or the Flat Earther? Is he playing the Glober?
I want. Sorry.
I think you should play the Glober. Yeah,
that's what I want to do.
Yeah, okay, go for it.
Devil's advocate.
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, you'd be best at that. Yep, go for that. Yep, let's hear it.
Yeah. Okay, let me try that. So before I do that, I want to first set up something about what the word evidence means before we. So basically, I want to say this: that something is evidence for a hypothesis if it's more expected, if the hypothesis were true than if it were false. If that's the case, then it raises the probability of the hypothesis being true. So I just want to start off, that's what I mean by evidence. So let's just give an example. If we're at a murder trial, you see the suspect's DNA on the body, right? That's going to be evidence that the person committed the murder because it's much more likely to find your DNA if they did commit the murder there than if they didn't. So I just want to start off by saying that's how, in this kind of devil's advocate conversation, I'll be thinking about evidence. Do you have any questions about that so far or no? Hello?
Are you asking me? I mean, nobody said anything, so I guess nobody has any questions.
Okay, nobody has. Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, so, and here's the argument I'll make for the Earth being a globe. So I take it that there are certain observations that are much more expected on the hypothesis that the Earth is a globe than on the hypothesis that it is flat. I'll detail them as follows. Okay, the first one is that certain stars are only visible on certain portions of the quote-unquote Earth, and are unable to be seen on other portions. So in other words, you can only see certain stars in certain regions of the Earth. Now, if you don't believe in stars, if you think stars are fake, I can modify it. I can say certain glowy thingies, the glowy thingies in the sky, right? Whatever. If you think stars are like fake or something. Now, here's another observation. Another observation is that if you use a camera and you focus a camera on the sky for a long period of time, you're going to notice that in the north, the stars are going to rotate clockwise around a star in the sky. And then south, you're going to have another opposite pattern, a counterclockwise rotation around a particular star. And then if you're at the equators, you're going to see them go left to right. Okay. So I've just detailed two observations. Okay. Now, the next claim is that these observations are very inconceivably strong evidence that the Earth is a globe. Here's why. This is exactly what you'd expect if the Earth is a globe, right? Because if the Earth is a globe, you can't see through the Earth. And so it makes perfect sense why certain stars would be visible. And on some areas and not others, whereas if the Earth is flat, you should be able to see any star at any point. Secondly, okay, so that's the first observation. What about the second observation? Well,
hold on. Yeah, we're not going to let you just monologue about this forever. So, yeah, why do all your globe proofs involve the sky?
Okay, yeah. So this question, yeah. So why does it involve the sky? Well, you can have evidence from the sky that supports the globe Earth hypothesis. There's nothing wrong. Like, it doesn't have to come from the ground. So I know a lot of things you say was like, well, why are you looking at the sky to show that it's the ground, the Earth is round or something? Well, you can have evidence. The evidence doesn't have to come from the ground. It can be from the sky. There are observations that you'd see in the sky that are more expected on one hypothesis over the other.
Yeah, I mean, I have a real problem with your use of hypothesis to start with, because your
by hypothesis, all I mean by hypothesis, all I basically mean is some kind of claim or proposition, right? And so for example, the Earth is round is a hypothesis. The Earth is flat is a hypothesis, right? And I'm basically evaluating which one is true.
Hypothesis is the whole point. You need a valid hypothesis. You can just say the water evaporates because I believe Superman is using his eyes to beam some heat and causing the water to evaporate. That's not a valid hypothesis. You need a valid hypothesis, something that you can test for or demonstrate in reality.
Okay.
It's very main way.
Sure. Yeah, so I'll respond to that. So first, I want to stress this is completely devil's advocate. I agree with you. I'm a flat earther.
You need a valid hypothesis. Make that right.
Yeah, so to respond directly to what you said, so let's just no longer use the word hypothesis. Let's just forget it. I've never used that word. Let's just say sure. Let's just talk about claims. There's two claims. One, the Earth is round. Two, the Earth is flat. And I can evaluate these claims on the evidence. And I've just argued that these two observations are very strong evidence that the Earth is round. So how would you argue against what I said there?
Well, first off, round and flat are not mutually exclusive because circles are round and flat. CDs are round and flat, you see? So you're still having an issue with your premise.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, like when I say round, I mean a globe versus flat, as in like a sort of like flat surface that's not a globe. So obviously, yeah. So you could have a circle, and there's some sense in which it's round and also flat. But by round, I mean a globe. Like I think that's pretty clear. But yeah.
Well, for globe, you're gonna need a drop over distance across the surface of the waters across the Earth or the Earth itself. You're gonna need a specific drop over the distance because the geometry, the globe that you're claiming, has a specific geometrical value, and you will require a specific drop over distance. Do you have measurements for that? For that specific drop value over the distance, do you have measurements of that? You don't.
Okay. Yeah. So for the sake of the argument, let's just say no, and I'll even and remember I'm playing devil's advocate. Let's just add more stuff in. Let's say I've never seen any curvature in my life. Let's just say I have no evidence that the moon landing happened, right? Because the reason I'm granting all this as a devil's advocate position is because the argument I just gave does not hinge on it. It does not hinge on anything like this. It doesn't hinge on me having ever seen curvature. I could have never seen curvature, and the argument I just gave would still work. The moon landing could have not happened, and the argument I gave would still work, right? So I can just grant you all this, and I just want to focus on like you specifically responding to the argument I gave, if that's fine.
You will have to discard a lot of other things based in reality to come to the conclusion that you're saying it works, whatever that means. You're saying the globe.
Did you hear my argument?
Works. Listen, your conclusion. You're saying your conclusion could be globe, but to get to that conclusion, you will have to skip physics of water, measurements of the Earth. You will have to skip the laws of thermodynamics, the second law of thermodynamics, how gas pressure works. You're skipping a bunch of steps to come to a flawed conclusion. Earth could be a globe. That will be an impossibility. That will be an impossibility because that will contradict what you can measure for, test for, measure for. That is contrary to the flawed conclusion. Earth is a globe.
Could you? Do you think you understood the argument I made?
Is it even a valid argument? You're saying it could be one or the other. What does that even mean? It could be flat or round.
Did you understand the argument I made?
You were arguing for round, right?
Did you understand the argument I made?
Your conclusion that you don't need. I mean, no, not really, because
Thank you for finally. Yeah, and by the way, I do want to say I do appreciate you finally answering after the third try.
Skip. Like I said, you have to acknowledge that to come to that conclusion, that erroneous conclusion, you will have to skip a bunch.
Yeah, I'm just saying I appreciate you answering after the third re-asking of the question.
But you do acknowledge that to come to the conclusion that it could be a globe, you will have to skip a bunch of other steps. You will have to skip a bunch of other things, right? You agree with that?
When you say skip a bunch of, I'm not sure what you mean by skip a bunch of other things.
If your conclusion is that Earth is globe, you will have to skip measurements that indicate that Earth is not globe. You will have to skip the physics of water. You will have to skip the physics of gas pressure. You will have to skip all of those things.
I heard you. You don't need to repeat that.
Test in reality to come to the erroneous conclusion.
Yeah. So as a devil's advocate here, I would say no. I don't agree with that. But the argument I gave.
You're degenerate. You're disagreeing with reality.
So real quick, and the argument I gave doesn't comment on any of that. So the argument I gave, just to repeat it, is that there are two observations. One, we're only able to see certain stars on certain positions on the Earth. And two, the stars have a kind of rotational behavior that's different depending on where you are on Earth. So for example, if you're in, say, like North America, you look up, you're going to observe the stars rotating like counterclockwise around a point. If you're in like South America, you're going to observe the stars rotating clockwise around a point. And if you're, real quick, just to finish. I know,
Yeah, but
just to
you still
finish.
keep
Yeah, but
the elephant in the room.
I know.
Listen,
Just if I can just finish.
Observing, bro. I know, bro. Come on, just stop.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. Can I just please finish?
Listen, you and I observe the same phenomena. We observe the
Yeah, but
stars in the
you're
sky.
repeating what you're repeating what you said.
The stars have ground positions, right? They have GPs, ground positions.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Okay, so you don't know what you're talking about then. But the
Anyway,
thing is,
we can just grant that I don't know what I'm talking about. It's not going to impact the argument.
Ground positions. You're saying if you are at a location of the Earth, you observe certain stars doing rotation, clockwise or counterclockwise, right? That's what you're saying. But you don't even observe
well,
that.
That's one of the observations. But earlier you said you didn't understand the argument. Well, why do you, if you don't understand the argument, do you think it's a good idea to interrupt me when I'm trying to explain it to you?
Asking that question. The conclusion.
Yeah, but do you think it's a good idea to interrupt me giving it if you don't understand it?
No, I do comprehend your flawed conclusion. You're the one that don't comprehend how you made it.
I'm not talking about the conclusion. I'm talking about the argument.
Listen,
I was asking if you.
You're still doing the same thing because you.
I was asking if you understood the argument, and you said no, and now you're not letting me explain it.
You are coming to a conclusion of the ground below your feet by looking at the lights in the sky and skipping all of the other steps that you will have to take to come to the conclusion that the ground you're standing on is spinning, and the observed phenomena that you're doing of the stars is a causal effect, a cause and effect relationship based on whatever reassumption you're having of you're standing on a globe. So you're saying, I'm standing on a globe, that's why I observe the stars doing what they do. So you're going backwards.
Can I respond to you uninterrupted now or not?
Listen, I haven't finished with that point because either.
Okay, but when you are done, I can respond uninterrupted, right?
Listen, you have to agree that the observation of the phenomena of the stars can be observed from a horizontal frame of reference that you could be standing on, and the movement of the stars doesn't necessarily mean that you're standing on a spinning globe.
Well, when you say it doesn't necessarily, it's not a logical entailment. I'm just saying like it's extremely strong confirming evidence for the globe, right? Because,
no, you don't.
Because if the Earth were flat, then there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to see certain stars at different positions on the Earth. Furthermore, if the Earth were flat, it wouldn't. If you were to look up the sky, you wouldn't observe like differences in rotation. You wouldn't observe like the sky doing different things at different points, like rotating clockwise here but counterclockwise the other way. You wouldn't observe that if the Earth were like just flat. But that's exactly what you'd expect if it were a globe.
That's just in your mind.
That's in your mind. You're having that erroneous conclusion again.
Oh, by the way, in case for anyone who just joined, I'm a flat earther. I'm only playing devil's advocate. I'm a flat earther.
Cartesian, you can drop that. You don't have to keep that like a fantasy going there. We all know
I just don't want anybody to have the false impression that I believe in this globe bullshit.
We all know you believe in the globe. Just be yourself. It's perfectly fine.
I can assure everyone I do not believe in this globe bullshit. I definitely don't believe in that.
No, but the issue that you're having is that you're imagining. When you say flat Earth, you're imagining some type of imaginary thing in your mind, and you're saying that thing doesn't work when I observe the stars. But what you imagine in your mind, that's not the actual place that we're in.
No. Yeah,
and that's not how the stars work. It's whatever mechanism you have in your head. That's not how the luminaries work.
Again, I didn't presuppose.
The only conclusion.
So real quick,
Hey, no, not real quick. The only conclusion that's going to make you come to a globe is if you measure the surface, right? Because whatever the sky's doing is the sky's doing. So what you do is you've got to measure the surface and go, okay, if the sky's doing this, then I live on a ball. Now I can measure the surface and make sure that it's a ball, right?
Yeah. So real quick, so just to respond to a lot of these points, again, as a devil's advocate here, I'll say like I said earlier, I take it that observations in the sky.
I know you're running off a script, but you need to answer that question.
Yeah, so the answer is no. I think observations in the sky can be evidence for one view over the other.
If you look in the sky and you see the sky doing things, and then you measure the surface and it's not curving, are you still on a globe?
If you look at the sky, if you measure the surface of the Earth and there's no curvature, that would be good evidence that you're not on a globe.
Right.
Yeah, but that's not relevant to I'm saying that certain observations in the sky can be. I'm saying that certain.
That cuts out your observation.
Are you going to keep interrupting me, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
So that cuts out your observation, doesn't it?
Yeah. So my point is that certain observations in the sky.
Your observation is irrelevant now. Because there's no Earth curvature.
So I agree that if you measure the Earth and you didn't measure any curvature, that would be it's a conditional that would be evidence that the Earth is not round. Now I was saying that there are observations in the sky. I'm saying there are observations that you might make in the sky that would be very good evidence that the Earth is round.
Yeah,
and I gave 2 examples of that.
One second.
It wouldn't be curving, right?
1 second. So listen, if I'm in a warehouse and there's a fan on the ceiling, right, the flat ceiling, horizontal ceiling, and one fan is going clockwise. And there's another fan next to it or near it, and the other fan is going counterclockwise. Therefore, the ground that I'm standing on is a ball, right? Because one fan is going clockwise and the other fan is going counterclockwise. Therefore, I'm standing on a globe.
Well, that's an indicator, Jim.
No, but that's not. So that wouldn't be analogous. So I know, but first to answer you directly, no, but that wouldn't be analogous to what's happening with the stars.
How do you know that?
So you're saying that just based on an observation, you're gonna skip all of the other steps and you can come to a conclusion of the geometry where you're standing on.
I'm saying observations are.
Erroneous.
I'm saying that some observations in the sky are good evidence for one hypothesis over the other. Now, here's why that would be disanalogous. Because in your case, right, when you're looking up, suppose one fan is counterclockwise, the other is clockwise. You can look up and see both fans, right? But in the case I'm talking about, the people on one location,
the other end of the factory.
excuse me. In the case I'm talking about, the people are only able to see the stars rotating clockwise, or are only able to see them rotating counterclockwise, or are only able to see them going east to west. It's not like they can see like both things. They're only able to see one or the other, right? And so that the only way that's expected is if the Earth is a globe. If the Earth is flat, that's like just. It's almost a contradiction if the Earth is flat, but like
you just extend the fans out. You just extend the fan blades out, right? And then you stand in between the two fan blades.
Extending the fan blades is not going to.
Okay, you don't want to be
properties by which it's disanalogous are not changed by extending the fan blades.
Do you? Right. So in the middle of the two fans, it would look like you're on the equator, wouldn't it?
You sound like you're really confused.
Not really.
Like you sound confused.
I mean, honestly, I'm a flat earther, but you guys are doing
That's
really
cap,
poorly.
bro.
No, you're not.
No one believes you, bro. That's cap, bro.
Okay, what's your best evidence that the Earth's flat?
He asked God, bro.
Yeah,
He said
my
God
best
got it.
here's my best evidence that the Earth is flat. So here's how I would argue. I'd argue that, okay, when we look at the ground, what do we see? Do we see any curvature? No, we see a flat Earth, and nobody has ever seen curvature. I would also argue that space is fake and that we live in a dome. I would also use that argument. And I would also argue that
how do you know you live in a dome?
Oh, you gotta let him finish. Let him tell you that he asked God, bro. He prayed. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of prayer and going to church, and a lot of that has helped.
How do you know you live under a dome?
I prayed. Years of prayer.
How do you know you live under a dome?
Years of prayer.
Come on, bro. That's cap, bro. Bro, how would you rate your acting skills on a scale of 1 to 10?
Listen, I'm a globe earther because when I'm driving, my car is transparent, right? And when I look at the left wheel, I see it going clockwise, and then I turn and I see the right wheel, and it looks like it's going counterclockwise. Therefore, I'm on a globe.
And I'm a globe because
that would not be analogous to what's going on with the stars.
I'm a globe because I love NASA.
Okay, so we've had a discussion. Let's go to closing statements now. So I'll give mine and I'll give you guys.
No, we're not going to go to
Put
closing
a poll in the
statements.
chat.
Where are the stars?
They're in the sky.
Yep. And are they a certain distance away or what?
That doesn't matter for my argument.
Yeah, it does.
Of course, they are a certain distance away, but what that distance is doesn't matter for the argument.
Okay, so if the stars are moving, does that make the ground curved?
Well,
I've seen someone else out here. I'm like, okay,
if the observations I've cited are correct, then that would be evidence for the round Earth.
Okay, how? Put that into an argument. I see the stars moving this direction, therefore the Earth is curved. Put
if the Earth were flat, that's not exactly
not if the Earth were flat. Not if the Earth were flat.
I'm making
an
the
argument for the globe.
Yeah, the argument. I can still mention the flat Earth as an argument.
No, you can't.
The idea is that it's unexpected if the Earth is flat. It's expected if the Earth is a globe. Therefore, it's very strong evidence for the Earth being.
Put it in an argument. Okay. Put it in an argument. The stars move in this direction in the south. The stars move in this direction in the north. Therefore, the Earth is curved. How?
Yeah. So if the Earth is a globe, this is exactly what you'd expect.
Okay.
If the Earth is flat. Yeah, because if the Earth were a globe, right? So if you're on a spherical or a spherical object, and you're on let's say you're on different poles with a spherical object, if something is rotating on the top versus the bottom, the person up there is going to see it rotating clockwise, and the one on the bottom is going to see it rotating counterclockwise. That's just a geometrical truth, right?
Okay, so how do you know that the Earth is spinning?
Well, it's baked in. That's the hypothesis. On the globe hypothesis, it would be spinning.
Not a hypothesis.
Okay, on the globe claim, it would be spinning. You see how saying it's not a hypothesis doesn't do anything? I could just change the word I'm using, and then you stay silent like a dog or something.
Oh my gosh! You don't dare get
you see how I can just switch the word I'm using, and you have no response anymore.
No. It's just that people don't even take you seriously enough to waste their breath to respond. Please.
Yo, he said spherical, bro. He said spherical. What the?
Yeah, no.
What are you?
So if the stars are moving in one direction and the Earth measures flat, then it's curved.
All right, I'll give you guys the last. So I'll make this comment, and I'll give you guys the last word here. So I made two different arguments. I pointed to the fact that you can only see certain stars in certain positions. I also pointed to the rotations of the stars at different positions. And I
Yeah,
showed
that
that
wouldn't
both of
matter.
these are
No,
much more
listen.
expected on the globe Earth, and I had no
What
response
over?
to that. You can respond now.
It's all cap, bro.
Yeah,
You
okay.
cap.
So measurements of the Earth, flat, used flat, observed flat. So sky spinning in direction still makes the Earth curved.
Okay, yeah, so I appreciate the discussion. That was all devil's advocate. Yeah, I do appreciate you guys talking. Nice.
No, you're
Cool.
cap, bro.
Peace, I'll head off.
Hey, Cartesian, water, water
He's
is
gone.
attached to the outside of spinning balls.
He's gone.
Therefore, Earth is a globe. Yeah, I know. But you see his logic. You can say, okay, water. Okay, you can make the other argument. Water doesn't attach to the outside of spinning balls. Therefore, we see real water not doing that. Therefore, Earth is not a globe.
And that guy was a glober, clearly.
Dude, the chat was onto him immediately. Let's put a poll up in the chat right now. See what the chat thinks. Was he a globetard? Obviously. Or no? All right, chat.
He said that.
Cast your vote.
Earth is globe. Earth is flat. Those are hypotheses.
All right, we got 5 votes to 0. Holy shit, this guy's 6 votes to 0. Got at least 7 votes to 0. It's so easy to tell, man. It's so easy.
Yeah, what gives it away every time is his flat Earth proofs.
He said, "I prayed to God. That's how I know it's flat."
What a retard.
So
That's
just
what these people think we think.
right, Sonny. That's the most embarrassing thing. No disrespect to anyone that's into that type of stuff, but like, dude, that's bad.
Yeah, I mean, even anybody who's into it. I mean, I've heard several of the people who maybe are more of the biblical persuasion, but they totally realize they need to learn the intellectual arguments if they want to, reach people in the world, So, but yeah, obviously somebody who's a globe believer doesn't understand any of that because their belief is faith-based, so they probably assume that ours is also. But yeah, I mean, and also his just like incredibly dense use of the word hypothesis and, so many things.
Did he do
Flags
that?
all
I
over
actually
the
didn't
place.
catch that. I didn't catch the hypothesis thing. That's pretty embarrassing too. Golly.
But
Yikes,
if you don't
bro.
respond within 5 seconds, you're quiet like a dog.
Yeah, what did he say there? I completely missed what he said there. I just heard him say something like, "You're a dog." I'm like, "Whoa, bro, whoa!" It's a kangaroo, actually.
You've got no answer. That's why you're quiet like a dog.
What the fuck, bro? We knew he was a capper immediately.
From his first statement, first statement was, "I look at the ground, I see the ground's flat."
I knew it. Yeah, chat was onto him immediately. Then I prayed really hard. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay.
All right. We've got Troggies. Trozig. Sorry, I'm illiterate.
Is that some Australian lingo? What's up, Trozig?
Trozig.
He's got his little Curious George avatar there.
Oh, that's cute.
I used to like that cartoon.
Is the man in the yellow hat? Yes. Are they from Australia? I don't know. They seem like they would be, but
No, they're American or Canadian.
Americans? Yeah.
I'm trying to shell him off on us.
With that weird Aussie hat on? What do you mean?
That's what I'm saying. He looks like an Australian to me.
That's
yeah,
like a Colombian hat.
bro. Oh, James, are you gonna take that, bro?
Well, to be fair, the Aussie hat should be pulled up on one side. So
wait, can you repeat that? My bad.
Oh, nothing.
Yeah, our hats aren't high like that. We have akubras, they're called.
Bless you.
Flat on the top, kind of like a cowboy hat, but a little better.
Yeah, so this is a small hat.
shit.
Oh yeah, you guys are totally right. I looked it up. Yeah, the man in the yellow hat finds George in Africa and takes him to live in New York City.
Africa, that's sick.
See, take him, CB. Take him.
Oh, god damn it. Oh, you're right. It's my sorry, it's fine.
The guy so silly was trying to say that I didn't comprehend what he was saying, but I was comprehending both sides and him skipping all of the steps. I was trying to explain to him that he was skipping all of the steps to go to the conclusion that the Earth is a globe. He was saying, if I look at the stars doing this and doing that, Earth is a globe, right? But you're skipping the physics of water, the physics of gas pressure. You're skipping the measurements, the lack of measurements of the curvature.
And now, because he assumes that you didn't comprehend, then you're not allowed to answer the question now.
Bruh.
Yeah, then he goes to looking at the sky, which they always do, which is hilarious.
Even all the other steps.
Yeah, they always want to point at the sky, bro. Unfortunately, the answers are not up there. Oh, Master Artichoke's back? Nice.
Got a capybara
Master Halitosis
on the top of a globe. Oh, he's. Oh.
Is he going to speak up, or Master Artichoke, you're up?
He's gone. No, he's not.
I just thought of something funny. All of my boulders here. Also, Twonger said the Earth is not measured flat in the chats. Feel free to roast him.
Yeah, we need some globe defenders here. We need some people who have some evidence.
Yeah, we need someone who's confident enough, who thinks there's evidence, and then we'll help him persist in his folly. And maybe eventually he'll become wise. Not likely, though, but it should be good entertainment and make for a good show, and I'm here for it.
Yes, we can be on the same page about that. Yes, Creation Beer. We are, aren't we? Because we understand the value of entertainment.
Facts. I call it edutainment. We're not only educating, we're entertaining.
Yeah, I think that's good. I like it. I'm on board.
Entercation. Entercation.
Entercation? Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. Let's see it. Yeah. Well, if I just spoke like this the entire time, and the backwards equilateral of the equation is x minus 5 due to the backwards equilateral equation, the juxtaposition is equally 5. Like, come on, dude. You got to put a little energy into this thing. When it's time to get serious,
even better.
You know the problem with that? Yeah, CB. You know the problem with that was it didn't actually make any sense. They actually tried to make sense. Now the thing is, what they say, in my experience in here, okay, what they say actually does make sense, but they overlook many things that make it that make them. Or let me rephrase that. They speak sense, but they overlook the assumptions.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have a scenario, whatever you're looking at, and there's a set of possibilities, you've talked about it before, right? Where there's a set of possible reasons for a thing. They hone in on one. They ignore the fact that they're assuming a set of things in the first place that lead them to hone in on that one assumption, and they dive right in and they argue from that position.
Yeah.
Right?
Sorry, Mick, I didn't understand you. You didn't use enough words.
Sorry, I'm kind of just spitballing here. But, I don't know, like, but you follow? Like, they just assume things, they don't consider them assumptions, and they take them as fact.
Yeah, if I assume the Earth is a sphere, then the sky should be doing this. Therefore, the Earth
It
is
does this. Yeah, period.
So, like, minus those assumptions, it makes sense. That's the thing.
You can't come to the conclusion of a globe without any assumptions.
Exactly.
No, bro. They're not coming to a conclusion. They're working backwards from, you know what I mean? They're not going toward a conclusion. They're working backwards from a conclusion. They got it already concluded, and they just work backwards. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
In their mind, it's already legit.
Exactly.
So then they're just like, yeah, it's fucking bullshit. Everything's backward engineered.
Oh yeah, totally backwards engineered, and that's where the assumptions come into play.
Right. So it's like, because this is true, we have to assume this also has to be true. You know what I mean? Like parallel rays and stuff.
Nonsense makes sense.
Yeah. That's another thing, Gen Z always had that. But like, I always say, like, okay, like, just because it makes sense doesn't make it true. You know what I mean?
Well, actually, because when we say, you know how we kind of specific about the meaning of words, right? And when you say that something makes sense, okay, your sensory system in your body, let's say the vestibular system, if the ground was moving, you will sense it. because the vestibular system is designed, your God-given sense is designed to detect rotation, actual rotation. And so, and also when they say, okay, it makes sense that the ground is spinning even though you don't sense it. You see how it's backwards? He's saying the nonsense makes sense, you see? And then when they say, oh, this I can observe with your vision, another of your sensors, we can observe the sun moving, but that means that that's another nonsensical argument, that they're arguing that the nonsense makes sense. They're saying we don't see the curvature, but that's how you know it's there, because you don't see it. That makes sense. It's there.
It's one of the ways, I think it's Matthew Lerms who puts it. The way he phrases it, it's a little bit more honest than all of the others that come in here. He would put it like in the discussion of whether we're rotating or not. He puts it like either we're not rotating or we are rotating, but we just can't feel it. And from that point of view, at least there's two options, but he tends to choose one over the other because all the other evidence leads to that. And
but keep it in your senses, right? Because when they say it makes sense, he takes it to mathematics. He says, oh, because it's only spinning 0.001 degree or whatever, right? He says one rotation per 24 hours, right? And your senses wouldn't detect that, right? So he puts it in math.
Right.
But that's how they hijack what the senses are actually indicating, right? And hijack that and take it away from the senses and make it nonsense out of the senses. And even though you can actually use your senses and let's say up with devices and technology, confirm and how do you say, test and confirm what your senses are already telling you. Like, you can use optical devices to observe the horizontal frame of. You're gonna use your eyes to observe whatever your laser test is telling you, right? Or you're gonna use cameras to observe the sun moving, or you're gonna do a bunch of other things with technology to confirm what you already know, that the ground is motionless, that it's not curving like a ball, right? And you're gonna confirm all of these things that your senses already point out, but they're going beyond that. They're going away from your senses, away from what you can demonstrate and confirm, and putting it in a nonsensical paradigm and trying to make sense out of the nonsense, just with words and numbers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, purely abstract.
That was more like abstract. Holy. I'm just kidding.
Basically that.
Yeah. They're just telling us the lore checks out. Like, yeah, okay, cool. You have your lore. Now, what about like the reality part? Yeah, but the lore. It's like, we know the lore, dude.
Does that make sense, Simple Jack?
Yeah. I see what you did there.
Who's that? Potato Man? It looks like a potato. Oh no, that's fucking Itchy and Scratchy. Holy shit. But no, not Itchy and Scratchy. What the fuck? Never mind.
It makes sense that if we leave reality where you don't sense the rotation of the Earth, it makes sense that you just write it on a piece of paper and make the numbers. Then it makes sense that the Earth is spinning. See, it's like backwards logic or nonsensical logic. And like I said, you can confirm what your senses are already telling you. The ground is motionless. Tell me, there's no devices that detect the rotation of the Earth, right? So your senses are correct. The Earth is not curving, it's not spinning. But then they're gonna do math and tell you, yeah, look, whatever. If we observe the sun and then with the solar system and whatever, all of these conjured numerical values that are nonsensical, then they want to make sense out of that. But it's still nonsense.
They rationalize it away. It's kind of like, let's say you have a table. On your table, you have nothing. Let's say, I have 0 apples on my table. But the story could be told that, oh, there was an apple there, but it was taken away before you looked at it. Right? So there's your positive 1 and then negative 1, and then it results in no apples on the table. Right? So the story is that event happened. The result is the same. But then you have to trust them that event happened, such that the numbers add up, but the story might not actually be true. See, I don't know if that made any sense. It kind of worked out in my head. Like you have +1 -1, that's 0, but 0 is just 0. So unless the occurrence of some sort of event that aligns with that math actually exists, well then you just have to take their word for it.
You have to pre-assume that you're already on the fantasy, and they build it from there.
Exactly. Yeah.
You have to jump in the fantasy first and then build it from there. And it makes sense in the movie, the Force and the Jedi and traveling across the galaxy to fight the evil Jedi, whatever. That makes sense in the fantasy. You're already talking in the fantasy. They say the solar system. People say solar system and they think about, the cartoon that they were given. The Earth goes around the sun like the other planets, right? But in reality, what we observe is the sun and all the luminaries revolving across the sky. We don't have a solar-centric system. The sun is part of a mechanism of the sky. But they kind of want to make it the Earth sun-centric, even though we don't observe the Earth being sun-centric. We don't see that. We don't observe that. We don't measure that. But they want to say the Earth goes around the sun. That's complete nonsense. But they want to do the numbers and the fantasy and makes sense out of the nonsense. We don't detect the sun. We don't observe the sun. There's no device that can show you the Earth being sun-centric. But how do that people say that makes sense? But it doesn't. Complete nonsense. Even the sky is not heliocentric. The sky, the sun is part of the sky movement, but the sky is not sun-centric. It's not heliocentric. I would say it's more, in my belief, it's more God-centric or whatever. It's at the center of all of the rotation of the sky. Because even flat earthers or people, that have other beliefs, they say the sky is geocentric, but the sky, the luminaries, the celestials are not geo. The sky is not geo. The ground is geo below your feet. The sky is above. The luminaries are, whatever the sky center is, they're centric to that.
Yeah, some of these Glob believers will acknowledge that they only believe it because of the body of science, that they assume these experts know better than they do. And it's a more honest position than the ones that paint themselves into corners actually trying to defend it. They really, the only way you could be an honest person and keep defending the Glob would be just to hijack, to give your mind over to the experts and admit that you only believe it because you have faith in the scientists. And a few of them will do that.
Well said. Have you guys spoken to Ardal? Ardal?
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the chat, Ardal. Talk to my friend here, Dandelion. Go ahead.
Do you have any thoughts about the Earth, Arda? Do you understand why we say that the Earth measures flat?
I ask one question.
Let's hear it.
How I improve my English level? I am mid-level English.
Hi. Yeah. So, what do you think about the Glob? Nope. Guess he doesn't want to tell us.
Yeah, maybe he did have a language barrier, or maybe he was just LARPing, but yeah. It has to be a mutual thing to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to.